Well, hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining me for another one of these short training sessions looking at the fundamental skills of Sage CRM. Today we're looking at creating and using groups of records within Sage CRM, mostly looking at how they are created and setting the scene for some of the other lessons that will use those groups for the different business purposes. So you can see that where we are within the cycle, I think we're exactly halfway through this particular block of lessons, but we'll be looking next at how we take those records that we have defined within our groups today and going on to work with appointments and tasks, setting up emails and documents, and then going on to in the later stages, looking at how we can carry out customer care and sales mechanisms within Sage CRM using the workflow and standard features of the product. We are covering today specifically how to create and use a group of records, and it is a powerful tool, and everything that we are doing in these lessons is being recorded, transcribed, and we're also going to make sure that they're available to us up on the Sage Support and Training YouTube channel. Here you can see a link to the YouTube channel, and that QR code actually takes you straight to the particular lesson or group of lessons that make up the course directly. So let's get going with what we're looking at today. First of all, we have to understand what we mean by a group inside Sage CRM. We can think of them as a saved list or a filter that works on our CRM data. They're used for all different purposes within the product. So they're used for the creation of reports, for dashboards, for campaigns, for exports. They are used anywhere we need to be able to segment our data and be ready for further use. There are two basic types. So they are dynamic or they're static. And first of all, to explain the idea of a dynamic group, this is perhaps the easiest to understand, where we've just come from dealing with the previous lessons on finding information and the advanced find feature. Because say we can think of them as a type of a saved search that will update automatically. A group then is a standing query against the database. So give me all customers that are of type, or give me all companies of type customer that have the status active, and that will segment the data and immediately pull back all of the records that match the criteria used in the dynamic group definition. The thing about the dynamic groups is that they always reflect the latest data in the system. So they are a moving target of information. So it's ideal for anything that is to do with key performance indicators, live information from the database in terms of performance, in terms of process inside the system. So very much a tool used for dashboards and campaigns, etc., and integration with MailChimp, for example. If we compare that with the idea of static groups, this is where we have perhaps used a question, a query, or a find to be able to create an additional, an initial set of data that matches a criteria. But the point is that they are run as a snapshot. So they represent the data that might match that criteria at that particular point in time. We create groups of records that are of a particular type of entity, but those static groups can actually be based on simply ad hoc relationships. So literally deciding that you want to put a record into a particular group is enough for static group definition. So it is, although it's based on, say, an entity like a person record, you can go around and manually select who you want to go into that static group. You could use a query to do it, but very often you also may want to add things as you need to. And the idea behind this is it's very useful for wherever you want to be able to create a time-based list of records that match whatever criteria you're using. So it's very useful for event invitations or audit lists, and they're automatically created as well when we import data as well. So you'll want to be able to create a snapshot of which records were imported into the system at any one time. That allows you to go back and carry out edits on that data. So how do we go about creating a dynamic group? Well, this is not a difficult thing to do. It's very simple. It is a question of creating it from a find screen, an initial search that we can carry out. And it is just a question of identifying it as a static group. I'll be showing that in a moment. And the same way, we can start the creation of a static group, working from one of the existing find screens to be able to create a group. But we also can start the process working instead from the main group administration screen that is found underneath the user context, underneath the My CRM menu for users that have the necessary elevated permissions to allow them to use groups. So let's go in and start to look exactly at what this is going to be. I'm going to log on as a sales manager. This person is Susan May. She has what's called info manager rights. So she has slightly elevated rights, and she does have explicitly permission once she's logged on to be able to access the group definition screen. So I'm going to now call that. I'm going to navigate into groups, and here you can see I've got a listing of groups. Now, as you look at this, what we see are the container names for these groups that are public to Susan May. They might be a mix of groups that are private to her, or they might be public completely so that all users within the system, or they could be reserved so that only info managers or system administrators can see these particular groups. Once we look at a group, if we were to look at a group, and we'll be seeing the contents of a group later, we won't be able to see information that we would otherwise not be able to see because of our rights. So we might see that there is a group of all of our key customers, but if we can't see those individual key customers, accessing the group won't give us elevated permissions to somehow see data that we wouldn't be able to search for. But let's actually start thinking about what we're going to create. I'm going to create a dynamic group first of all. So I've clicked on create a new group, and here you can see that I've got something that starts to look like a search screen, and I can decide what it is that I'm setting up. I need to, in this case, I'm going to look for all of my US contacts with software licenses. Now, unpacking what that's saying, I want to be able to look for opportunities that are associated with software licenses within where the company is in the North American or the US territories. So this is where I can choose that I am going to create this as a dynamic group. I can decide who I'm going to make this available to. I need to pick the underlying view that is going to be bringing the data together, and that determines the columns that are available within the result set, and actually the columns available for me to search on. Again, that's something that a system administrator can set up and make available for groups. there are lessons already available on the Sage Training YouTube channel that discuss the way in which we can create such queries and make them available for groups definition. But if I click continue, here you can see it's based on a particular view. I'm making a group for opportunities, and what I need to do now is to think what it is that I have to define. Now, if I want to add additional columns into the contents of the group, you can see that there is a little, I would select the field in the top left box, click the add to contents, and I'd be able to add that in. But you can see that I've also got another option as well on that screen to allow me to provide additional definitions of what I want to be able to include here, not just in the contents, but then thinking about the criteria that I want to use. Now, I've chosen two fields that allow me to search for the company status and also the opportunity information. And I could be more sophisticated in the definition of this. We touched on this in the last lesson, which is the way in which we could use potentially the advanced find to help us find the particular records that match complex criteria, where we might want to have lots of different clauses in terms of this city or that city and this status or that status across the information contained or provided by the underlying database view. There's also an option here to bring in information either to be included in the contents or included inside the search criteria called the key attribute data. That's a topic that again has also been dealt with in a previous lesson, and it is best experienced actually through the feature known as tagging, where you can tag records within the interface to be able to mark them as belonging to a particular project or to put a code against them, so you can create associations across multiple entities according to a particular project code or a particular value in the tag. It's equivalent of hashtagging the data. But we're not going to do that today. We're just sticking with the very simple listing of information that is in the contents and the two fields that are defined criteria here. And then I step on and I can start to define values of the criteria that we're interested in. Here, because of choosing the relatively simple definition of the group rather than the advanced find mechanism, these are both, or these are all the values that are going to be included in terms of the territory and in terms of the opportunity product that is being mentioned. So these are the values that we want to hunt down. And if I continue, you can see that that goes away and carries out a search. Now, it's at this point that now that I've seen that this is returning data that is useful to me, I can now go and save this as a group. So I can click the save button and that's become a saved group. And once the group is saved, Sage CRM allows this group to be able to be used for a variety of different tasks. Now, you have slightly different tasks available to you, whether you are dealing with a dynamic group or whether you're dealing with a static group. We'll be looking at the core behaviors across both of these groups in the following lessons when we're starting to work with communications, tasks, appointments, and carrying out mail merges and email campaigns. But if we look at these, this is what we'll be learning about. But if I return back to click the continue button, you can see listed out here within the structure of the different groups, the newly created group shown in the list. And that's clearly marked there as a dynamic group. How else can we proceed? Well, let's start to think about what else we want to do. I'm going to go and look at another way in which I can create a group, and I'm going up into the Find menus. We actually touched on this, as I said, in the preceding lessons, where we can go away and we can start the process of searching for data. Here I'm going to search for companies within a particular territory, and I can go away and I can return all of these. These happen to be US Central um, uh, records, and now that I've found all of those in the US Central um, territory, I can go ahead and I could create this as a group. And you can see there's a button on the right hand side. Once I've returned data in from the find, there is a option here for me to create a new group. So if I click that button, I have to provide it with a value as to what it is that I'm storing. And this is marked down then as a dynamic group. And so if I save, you'll see that that's been saved into the system. And if I go and look at my groups again, you can see here the newly created group as well. So I've shown you there two different mechanisms of allowing us to define a dynamic group, one starting within the group page and one starting within the context of a standard find page as well. Advanced Find also had that mechanism, and we saw that on the preceding lesson. So if we now start thinking about the next point that we want to look at, which is the static campaigns, we can start to think about whether we want to create a static group. Here we're looking at the type. As I said, it's going to be a static group. I provide the information. This is all invitations for a summer event that I want to bring contacts to. And I could now start to look for prospects that match the criteria that they are persons that I can see that are prospects that I want to bring in. So the search criteria needs to be defined. So I'm putting in the search criteria here, and I am then going to go through and click the continue button, specifying the criteria that I want to use. And the criteria here, again, this will be in a very similar way to the dynamic group, going away, retrieving a set of data. But at this point, this is now going to start creating a snapshot of information that needs to be within the group. And so here you can see I could select in or select out certain records that have matched the criteria to be included within the group. But what I'm going to do is I am going to click save. So all of these records are going to be part of my group. And that's a fixed list of the query that was run immediately now as I've done the work. So if I've clicked save, I've got a new static group. You can see on the right hand side, I've got a slightly different set of actions associated with being a static group as opposed to a dynamic group. But I can now also start to use this in another way, because I chose customers, or I chose contacts where the company was simply a prospect. But what if I want to add in some additional contacts to do this? Well, I can go and look at my groups, and there is my group that is defined. But right now, knowing that that group is there, I might want to go off and search for a person. So I'm using a recent list to go and look for somebody that I've previously added in to CRM. And here I'm going to select, I think, Kieran. So here I've gone and chosen to look at Kieran O'Toole, and this contact is for a company of type customer, not prospect. So they were never part of this of the static group that I created. It wouldn't have been found by the underlying query. But what I can do now is I can go and click on the Add to Group, and here I can select a static group that I want to add this record to. So this is where you can start to rove around creating around your system, creating ad hoc associations of entities of the same type to be able to be used as, say, a survey sample, or for invitations to an event. Anything that requires you to have taken a snapshot of information that is appropriate for um, uh, carrying out a quality survey or whatever your purpose is. But here I've chosen the particular record. I'm going to save that record into here. And now if I go back to look at groups, and I go down into the group that I was editing, so this is the summer event, here you can actually see Kieran O'Toole is now part of this static group. So immediately we've got this association of records, which is completely potentially ad hoc. They don't have to have been a member of a group. Now, how else do we get groups like a static group created? Well, one of the ways is if I've imported information. This happens to be, you can see in my machine here, I've imported a set of records. You can see a group has also been created in the list. And the point about having a static group created as you import is so that you can always go back to that group and, if necessary, carry out a mass update or a batch action on that set of records to be able to reassign it to a particular person, maybe update some of the information such as the territory or any other aspect about the data that has just been imported. Okay, now let's summarize everything that we've covered in this lesson. We've seen that there are two types of groups within Sage CRM. The first is a dynamic group. The second is a static group. Dynamic groups are ones in which, once you have created the criteria, records are automatically included into the group because of those criteria. And you would use a dynamic group in circumstances when you need live, up-to-date data. And so that's when you are wanting to segment your information for marketing purposes, or if you're wanting that as the basis of any real-time display of information, such as a dashboard KPI um, uh, report, or anything being delivered into the interface. In terms of the static side, the static reports represent a snapshot. They're a fixed set of records defined in time, and they allow ad hoc membership. So either they were created with an initial database query, or they are simply selected into the group. Both are supported as a way of building this fixed list of records. You would use this when you want, when you know you don't want your list to be changed automatically. It's something that is under the control of the user who has created that list. And it's when you would use it for things like trade show invitations, or if you are wanting to do qualitative surveys or compliance reports, or in fact, wanting to actually send people information to ensure that they are happy with the idea of providing consent for GDPR or privacy legislation purposes. So lots of different uses for the slightly different types of groups that we can create from Sage CRM. So let's have a look at where we are within the cycle of training. This has been recorded, it will be edited, it will be made available up onto the YouTube channel like the other lessons, and we will be using the information that we have explored today in our next lesson when we're starting to deal with appointments and tasks. So we've come to the end of our lesson today. Let's see if anyone has got any questions. Thank you very much for attending today's lesson. I look forward to seeing you at the next event. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.